Okay, so there are new effects on this program, and this is the original. This is FastFingers 2. It's almost done. I thought it was done, but it's not quite done. But it is done, almost. I might have to take things out of it. It's getting too complicated.
It's kind of copyright from the future. This software's from the future.
So if you notice, the sounds are a little different now. The multiplication routine for the algorithms are much nicer algorithms. Fewer clock cycles makes a faster, happier system. Okay. Okay, and what I was starting to tell you about is if you look up on the screen, you'll see that it says SEQFL. Now what that means is when that is switched on, I've taken some of the stupid effects out and put some good ones in. When SEQFL is selected, what happens is the sequencer does not affect pitch anymore. It affects filtering. So I'll show you. I'll see if I can make an example of what happens there. Oh, and I have 16 different sequences across the top, so I can play with. Okay, and I can also edit those sequences with step sequence editor, which I've got. You see, I have a cursor and all those other goodies there. And along the right side of that that represents the top row of keys on the 64. Except for the last two is clear at the bottom, and then insert delete on the very bottom. So on the right column, on the very far right, you'll see which keys are represented by each row. So there's 16 different sequences, and the sequence editor. Now, when you hit the 0, all the sequences start with 0. 0 is the root key that you hit. So when you play a sequence, the very first note is 0. The key that you're holding down is 0, and then the numbers that follow are the numbers of semitones above that. So now, if I like what I've done when I'm editing, like I'll put a new one in here just for the show. We'll do 5, and this is in decibel now, and not in up to from 0 to 63. That's the maximum. And 5, I put in 10. I put in 15. Okay, and when I put in the left arrow, that's the end of the sequence. So this is only going to be a real short sequence. Then when I hit the return key, it's going to save it. And that's the first one on the very top, so that's the first key on the left. So no, wait a second. Somehow this has changed on me. 1 second. Yep, the numbers are still up there. I'm having trouble with this keyboard too. The keyboard, and this is okay. Run stop key will let you exit the sequence editor without. So let's say you messed up this. You put a bunch of junk on the screen, and you don't like what you did. You change your mind. You just hit run stop, and you go back to the regular program. Okay, I wanted to show you these. So anyways, SEQFL is what we were doing there. All right. Okay. So there's a lot of possibilities with those. There's a lot of different interesting things you can do with sounds doing that. Okay, now the next thing that you can do is if you look at the top of the screen right now, you'll see there's a P up there. The P means pitch. That means that when I switch to the editor, it will go to this screen which says Step at Sequencer. Okay. When I hit the space bar, I can toggle that to V, which means velocity. And when I hit that key now, it says Step Velocity Editor. So now I have a Step Velocity Editor, and I can also switch between, and when I'm in this mode, I can use the, when I'm in this mode, I can play the same sequence over and over again, but change the velocity feel. So what happens is, that's really loud. That's massive. I'll go up a little higher. Okay. There the accent's changing. Still playing the same. So it's like your TB303 box. You know, you can play with the, not only the pitch now, we play with velocity. And you can select different velocities for each of the, so you've got 16 velocity sequences, and you have 16 pitch sequences, or tones, or note sequences. And you can, so you have essentially 256 at your fingertips, 256 different feels at your fingertips. Okay? Okay. Now, what I've also done, and this was because of a mistake that happened, I have a thing called the hands-off sequencer. And it plays one, and it runs without me having to hold my finger down. Okay. There's another new effect called which I call crickets. Let me see here. On the top left, you'll see C. When I turn that on, and when SEQFL is on, this is what you get. Now, that even gets more interesting when you play chords with that. It's a little bit much for that speaker, I don't know. And what that's doing is it's cycling through the waves. It's cycling through the waves in time of the sequencer. The other thing I've done is I think eventually I'm going to get rid of the recording on the top, because I'm going to go mostly to editing by screen. I like that better myself personally, and it's kind of to put in sequence. This is never going to be used. I can't see this in the future being used. Anybody to sit down that's going to actually use this, and they're going to want to record whole long songs with this. You're going to use this with the MIDI. You're going to record to a MIDI sequencer, and you're going to play it back. So this is mostly a performance and step sequencer type of a system, live performance step sequencer. So what I see is I'm going to put up my I'm going to have another screen. It's going to be a transpose screen. Okay, so and I also ran in. My mind. And what else is happening here is when I play on these keys, these play the first 8 sounds that are in my bank of sounds. Now, because MIDI is only limited usually to 127, when I switch to this keyboard, I'm playing now sounds that are in the range on the banks in the assorted synth area, F1, in the F1 area. And I'm going to make the whole top row to do that, to play those sounds. So what happened as a result of this new effect here, and I'm a little disoriented because I moved the key. What I did also was, I've switched between the Commodore and the switch and the shift lock key now for the sequencer. So I can lock that. Okay, now, but we want to, I'm just a little disoriented because of that. You. So I don't have to hold my finger on anymore because I'm making use of the shift lock key now. Okay, so now what I was telling you before was, that sounds a little different. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. So I said, the heck with it. We'll just shift lock it. So, let me think. So those are the things those are most of the new changes. So there's, most of the new changes are velocity, variable velocity and velocity being used. And also, it's very loud, so I don't know what you guys are hearing. Yeah, you put it down a little bit, because, or maybe at this end, I don't know. It's a little bassy too, eh?
Yeah, well, bass is good.
We like the bass. Try that.
Okay. So as I said, the biggest things that I've added is the step editor. You know, to do editing this way, and and the other thing I realized. Okay, so if you look at the screen here, I wanted to utilize all 256 bytes for these sequences. Now, what happens if you stick an end tag at the end of this? That's an end tag. That says the end. That's the end of the loop. Okay. That if you stick an end tag at the end, now you don't have 15. You don't have 16. You have 15. So what I said, okay. So I'm going to make a limit on the size of the sequences. They're only going to be 16 note sequences. That's it. No more falling into the next line, into the next line, into the next line. Just strictly 16 note sequences. So, and because I don't want to use up bytes unnecessarily when I'm going to play a 16 note sequence, I don't want to have to, you know, put where am I here? Let's say that's 23, right? So that way, if I wanted to make that a 16 note sequence before, what I would have had to do was I would have had to, it's a little awkward the way I'm working here. I would have had to put that there on the next line to say that line is 16. And then that would mean this whole line, the second line would be useless. Okay? So as that was a tag, that's a tag at the end of the line. So I said rather than do that, I'm just going to say make all 16 is the maximum length. You can make them shorter. You can have odd time. You can have 7-note sequences now. You can have let's see, 6, 7. See if this is going to work properly this time. Hit return, and that'll be 7 notes. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. That's the first one. I'm having trouble with. Control is always the escape to get off the MIDI keyboard. Control, you hit the control key, it gets out so you can see what you're doing. I don't know what's happened there, I'll have to check that out. But normally that, those tags, oh, I know what's wrong. I just figured it out. I'm editing the velocity screen, that's why it's not working. It doesn't work on the velocity screen. So I have to switch this back to the pitch screen. Okay? Now, okay, where are we at here? Pitch. Okay, now, we'll make it 7 notes. We'll make this 5. We'll make that 7. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we'll make a 5-note sequence. Hit return. Okay, there it is, right there. Okay, and if we play with the, so the velocity shouldn't work that way, but the velocity is supposed to be totally independent. It runs whatever it wants to run, whatever way you set it up. I might put that on the velocity as well. So you could have something, in fact, you could end up having something like 5 against 6, or 6 against 8, or different types of rhythms like that, to get the emphasis on certain notes. And when you hit it quieter, I'm going to go back to the velocity. When you hit the keys quiet, when you hit them louder, so there's a lot like this thing. What this is turning out to be, what this is going to be, the ultimate DJ toy. That's what this is going to be, really. That's the direction it's moving in. And for me, and when I record with it, and like I said, there's no way I can go through all the sounds. I made a whole bunch of new sounds, but I've changed the organ sounds quite. Like there's 256 sounds, so I'm not going to be able to. think that should deal with everything that I've changed in the last 2 years. And like I said, the only thing is originally I had the recorder set up so the recorder, when I'm playing a sequence, it would record the sequence while I was recording. But now the things are so fast, there's so much happening. This keyboard's being scanned around 4,000 times a second, this keyboard. And everything is being dedicated to this keyboard. That's why this keyboard is, I have to, there's very few call keyboard routines for this. Most of it is for here, so that this is as responsive as possible. Oh, one last thing, we got to do this. Oh, I'm at velocity again. Okay, the bees are coming. And I put a bunch of new sequences in. I'll run through them real quick. But, you know, it's up to the end user. You can put any kind of sequences in they want, right? Oh, I don't need to hold that key. All right. And so you got to keep I just keep playing with it, you know, and that's where it is right now. So I think I'm going to be taking. I don't think you're going to have these recording things up on the top of the screen. I might find a way to record without it. I want to use the whole top row for presets. I'm trying to make it as performance easy as possible. And when you switch to the MIDI, it'll be a different 16 because I have control change from here, from the keyboard. You know, program change. And I only have 8 keys times 4, that's 32. That's all I have there. So I figured I can already get those sounds from the top row on the home screen. So why don't I make a different top row for the MIDI home screen type of thing, you know what I mean? Even though you can't see it when you're playing. Very nice sounds. Okay, that's it. Any questions about this? How long is it? How long did I go? What time is it?
Yeah, half an hour. Yeah, that's
I,
great.
I,
What can you tell me about the MIDI interface? Is that your custom design? Or
yes, yes. The MIDI interface it uses a PIC. I think it's 887, PIC 887 chip. I think that's what it is. And there's other things on that board for future expansion to break away from the 64 completely. I shouldn't say that.
I was curious if you thought about whether you want to feed say a recorder to save sequence in, so you have like a song or something on in a tune in music in MIDI format that you feed it in and then you manipulate it on.
Yeah, I was, you mean to have some control so that I can turn,
You could improvise on a piece or something.
like I can have, I'm playing with this keyboard.
Yeah, right.
Which is a MIDI keyboard.
Yeah.
This could easily be a computer
Right.
playing
Yeah,
a tune that's already been pre-recorded.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I could hit hit a sequence and start a sequence here and there if I want to do it that way, and while it's recording to another device, like to a recorder, a digital recorder, or whatever. One other thing I want to mention real quick before I forgot. The only next thing I'm going to do with this, I've looked at this glide. No. Okay, I've looked at this glide effect with the letter E. I've played with that so much, but you know what I was thinking? Nobody wants to play with the glide on continually. So I have that switch on there. It's like a locked switch for glide. So what I'm thinking I'm going to also do is on the home screen, because I'm going to be taking some functions off of the home screen for the performance screen. I'm going to have a key here. You're going to be able to hold it whenever you want to add glide. You just be able to hold that key down and get glide for that. You know, so that you can have glide or not have glide on the fly quickly, because that can get tiring. And you know, it's a lot of mathematics for that, and it was too slow. I have all my effects are running. They're all running in a row, like all the effects are separate subroutines. I had to call the glide subroutine twice for all the rest of the effects to make it fast enough with all the changes I've done with the clocks and all, you know, all the things that are happening in the background. So, but that's the only other thing I'm going to do, I think. And like I said, then hopefully we get it onto a cartridge, and it's something that's, you know, easy to take around. So, any other questions?
I was just a question about terminology is, so velocity means something like volume, right?
Yes. But but I use it a lot with the filtering.
Yeah.
It is quieter, but it also. And it also depends on how I set it. Oh, I got the glide on too. That kind of messes up the ear. That kind of affects your. Why? Where's the glide? Yeah, E. Sometimes it's upside down, like the louder you. Yes.
Just going along with his question, the pitch and the velocity that you can switch back and forth. So that affects like when you actually press a key on your like music keyboard, how fast or how hard you press the key affects the pitch, or if your velocities affect like the
Yes,
velocity when you press the key. So that's what it's.
That's one of the reasons why the velocity screen only goes up to 63. Actually, the math is not perfect. That's why sometimes I'm going past the 250. Like in 8-bit, you only have 256. I use mostly the most significant byte of the filter. So I'm going to have to, if I really want to get this good, I'm going to have to start using at least 4 bits of the lower of the, and because you're adding in the velocity that you're hitting, plus the velocity that thing is playing, plus whatever the velocity is set at. See on the right-hand side between F5 and F7? Or no, I mean the filter value. So those things add together, and obviously they're going over 256. So when that happens, when they go over 256, all of a sudden, you might be hitting it, and you're expecting one kind of sound, and it's doing the opposite. It might be getting more tinny when you hit it loud, or it might be getting more bassy when you hit it loud, something you're not expecting, depending on whether you're using high pass, low pass, and there's so many different things affected. There's high pass, low pass filters, and band pass filters, and all those things affect the way that velocity. So I'm using velocity mostly for that, but I am playing with the volume, which I shouldn't do because it's a little bit clicky when you try to play with the volume. But I'm doing it now. So, but I wanted to stay away from the volume as much as I wanted to do mostly filtering effects with the velocity. Okay? I got to get out of here, right? Is there any other questions? Because
So, thanks again.